Alright, hello, welcome back to the YouTube channel. As you can see, this is also going to be a podcast episode that I'm recording real time, so I'm really excited to bring this episode YouTube video to you guys. But today I'm going to be sharing 28 things that I've learned by 28, because in 6 days I'm gonna be 28 when I'm recording this, but my birthday is on the 26th of February and I can't quite believe that I'm gonna be 28. I feel like that's really crazy, and I feel like before I sort of jump too much into like just freaking out about it, I'm gonna go ahead and record my podcast intro. If you don't know, I have a podcast called Resiliency in Running. I've done an episode like this for the past 3 or 4 years now, so I will link like previous episodes, essentially like, you know, 27 things I've learned, 26 things I've learned by the time I was at those ages. So I'll link them in the description box of the episode, but without further ado, let's hit record. Hi everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Resiliency in Running podcast. My name is Liz and I'll be your host. I'm incredibly excited to bring to you the 28 things that I've learned by 28 for my birthday. I love doing this episode every year, so just sit back and relax. We'll just jump right into the episode. I definitely do not get that on one try every time, but that's the first time in a while. So all right, hello and welcome back to the podcast. I can't quite believe that I'm recording 28 things by 28, because I just can't quite believe that I'm actually gonna be 28, and almost feels like I've like now gone from like, you know, mid-20s to like being in the later half of your mid-20s, and now I almost feel like between like the mid-20s and like hitting 30, I'm now officially going to be like on the closer half of, you know, getting closer to 30 versus being closer to 25. I feel like 27, obviously you're like smack dab in the middle. 27, I'm not gonna lie, it felt like it was just like a very, I don't know, kind of an in-between age. A lot happened. If you follow me on social media, then you know that I went through quite a lot. So 27 was a huge year for me, and I feel like I have a lot to share in terms of 28 things that I have learned in this past year, and things that I want to carry with me into 28 as well, not just keeping it to, you know, only things that I've learned. Obviously, some things that you learn can be really good and you want to take that on with you. Some things you learn and you're like, and I want to keep that, you know, in 27. So I'm just gonna jump right in, because obviously 28 things on a list is a lot, so we're just gonna jump right in. I don't know if you guys in the YouTube video can see, but I've just got it on my phone and I feel like it is just, the exposure is overexposuring. But I'm just gonna read off of this list that I wrote down, so we're just gonna jump right in. Number 1, life can change in an instant, whether it's, you know, a different place to where I was last year, the year before, etc. And I feel like that's a really sort of, I know it sounds very cliche to start off on, but at this point last year, I had just gotten through, well, I had just been blindsidedly broken up with. I didn't see it coming. I was sort of, I don't want to call it couch surfing, but I was staying with family friends in London because that blindsided breakup also meant that I didn't have a place to live. And it was a very weird place that I found myself in. I definitely didn't envision my 27th birthday to look like that. And I really wish that I could go back and tell that girl just what everything incredible that was in store for her in the year to come, because 27 was truly an incredible year of just so many cool things and so many PBs and running and meeting Gabriel and just so many incredible life things. And I just feel like it's really easy to really get like almost like you can either get really fixated and like focused on something in your life or the way that things are going in your life at a given time, or you get really comfortable with things and you kind of just like, and I know that that sounds so bad, like, you know, like you know, at this point, like in January of last year, I felt like I was in a pretty stable relationship. I never saw the breakup coming, and it's not to say that like I shouldn't have felt comfortable in it, because I think that you should feel safe and comfortable in a relationship. But I think it's kind of to say, like, I have another point to follow up on this later, but it's just to say that like things can change in an instant. I've also been going through something this year that I did not expect to get news-wise in January, and it's been really tough. But again, I'm going to touch on it later in this list, but it's just to say that like, yes, life can change in an instant, but like that doesn't mean that you aren't capable of handling that change. Number 2, be grateful for how far you've come and the ways in which you've changed. I feel like I oftentimes will like compare myself, especially when I'm like, you know, sharing online about my running journey. I share a lot comparing to like my first marathon per se, but forget about like where I was maybe 10 years ago, and I forget just like how far I've come from, like coming from a place of just not knowing what I wanted to do with life, not knowing really what to expect. I remember going into college. That's crazy to actually say that 10 years from 28 basically means that I was like going into college for the first time. But I feel like I was going into college and it felt like I was doing it because everyone else was doing it, and I didn't really know exactly what I wanted to do with my life. I know that a lot of people feel that way. I know that I'm not alone in that. But I feel like now that I'm turning 28, I feel like I am becoming more self-aware of what it is that I want to do with my life. And I am still figuring it out, and I'm still trying to figure out like how to pursue that and how to just like go for that. I feel like I've definitely grown in ways that have brought me not only closer to that goal, but like more confidently and boldly just kind of going after that goal, rather than sort of like going, you know, along with what everyone else does and just like kind of, you know, doing the traditional thing that everyone else does, and kind of just like actually like, you know, wanting to venture more into like my creative side and like just share that like I have with this podcast and now with this YouTube channel, and challenging myself in new ways. And so I feel like I've really come a long way, and I feel like that's something that you should always remind yourself of, because if you're like me, it's a lot easier to be harder on yourself than it is to actually celebrate yourself and give yourself the pat on the back that you might need. Number 3, welcome change even if it's uncomfortable. This one is something that I am always preaching, because we're resiliency in running and I am nothing if not resilient. I feel like this really kind of goes back to like kind of the first major change that I ever went through was when my dad's job moved us from California to Washington. So moving to a completely new state and like leaving behind childhood friends, childhood home that we grew up in, and all these things to go somewhere completely new where we didn't know anyone. And I had never felt so like on my own, even though I had my family with me. I feel like in a way that has really built me up for success in like the decisions that I've made, like moving to the UK, moving to London. And I feel like I would never have done something as I call it crazy, but like it's really not that crazy. It's just another English speaking country. But like I don't think I would have ever been confident enough to go for this sort of a move and like these sorts of decisions that I've made had I not gone through like unwanted change, or just like change that I didn't even see coming or didn't want and didn't expect. And I think that that like constantly is a lesson to me, as I shared earlier about the breakup. And I think that life really will like throw you curveballs, and you'll like think that it's going one way, and then suddenly it's like actually you're taking like a sharp right turn and it's going down a road that you are so unfamiliar with. You have no idea what to expect. Like if you just stay the course, you'll see why, and you'll like eventually kind of like see like, you know, that everything happens for a reason, which I actually think that that might be another point. Moving on. Number 4, life gets easier when you stop living to please other people. This one's easier said than done, but I am such a people pleaser, and I feel like that comes from a place from much younger and going through really tough things and not really truly taking the time to like get to know myself and get to know who is Liz, who am I. And I didn't really kind of like look at myself as like someone that I could just like spend a Friday night in and, you know, go through and process like really tough things that might have happened that week. I always looked to outer sources such as like friends or colleagues or just people around me as like sort of looking to them to like please them. Also kind of get that like I kind of look to them decisions and like kind of see what they thought of certain situations. And I just never really I never trusted myself enough, and I relied on people so heavily. I feel like over time, like I've become so much more comfortable with myself, and I've really truly learned after I quit drinking alcohol that I am such a true introvert and that I was only ever a quote unquote extrovert when I was drinking. And so I feel like I've become so much more comfortable with myself. But I think that this is something that I'm continuously trying to learn, because I think that there's this this sort of notion that we all think that like we need to make sure that everyone likes us and make people like you and do things to make people like you, when really, like, if there's anything that I've learned on being on the internet, it's that you're not gonna please everyone. Not everyone's gonna like you. Like, I learned this year that there's an entire thread on Reddit that is just bashing me, and I never like purposely go and look at it. I'm just like aware of it. It's something that kind of made me realize, like, I thought that like I was creating content for a positive reason, to help other runners, to help other female runners. But at the end of the day, like, people can take what you say out of context. People can, you know, take what you say the wrong way, spin it to be something completely different. So like at the end of the day, if you live to people please, I just feel like you'll be so exhausted. And like, that's probably the best way that I could term it. And I feel like during the pandemic, that was like the first time that I really truly initially realized, like, wow, this people pleasing thing is like really exhausting. And actually, like, most of the friends that I had were not true friends, and they were just people that, like, it was like a one-way street sort of a friendship where like I was the only one reaching out. I was the only one that lived to serve them and please them. And so I feel like that's a very long-winded tangent that I could go on and on about, but that one is one that I'm very, very passionate about. Number 5, chase the passion project. Life is too short. And I say that as I am filming a YouTube video. Guys, if I could go back to 2020 and like genuinely tell you what I actually wanted to do instead of starting this podcast, like, don't get me wrong, I love this podcast. I love uploading every week. I love sharing my life and sharing like race experiences, running experiences. Like, if I was genuinely honest from day one that I decided that I wanted to share my running journey online, I wanted to make YouTube videos. And like, it's taken me over 4 years, I think, or yeah, it's 2024. But like, I just, like, I wish that I could go back and just say, like, just try the YouTube, try making YouTube videos and just like see where it takes you. But it was just like that fear of like worrying about what people might think of me and like judging me and all that stuff. And if I didn't get like the editing right, or if my camera wasn't good enough or my microphone wasn't good enough, all that stuff would like sit in my head. And I kind of thought at the time, like, you know, the podcast will just be easier and that like it's faceless and it won't be like attached to me. And like, that's fair. Like, I think it was, to be fair, like a nice way to start and like kind of slowly almost like soft launch me into the world of like social media and content creation. But I kind of wish in a way that like, I don't know, sometimes I think like I wonder what would have happened had I just gone for it. And so yeah, if I could say anything, like, just go for the passion project. Just like start it today. Number 6, and this kind of connects to number 5, better the fear of what others may think than the fear, wait, let me read that again. Number 6, better the fear of what others may think of you rather than the what ifs that would haunt you for the rest of your life. And that's something that I feel like I went through something years ago where, and it had to do with a boy. I like waited so long to tell this person how I felt. Like, at the end of the day, I am glad that I told him how I felt, and like, it's okay that it wasn't reciprocated. But like, for me, the moment that I finally decided to tell this person how I felt was like, I saw a sign on like, I don't know, it was like in a tube station or something about like the what ifs, and like, you know, better to like tell people how you feel, or like just be honest and like, you know, rather than like keeping your feelings to yourself and never saying how you feel, never telling someone the truth. Like, I just feel like the what ifs totally outweigh the fear of what others may think of you. And I feel like at the end of the day, like, if people truly judge you for chasing your dreams and like going for what you have always wanted to go for, I'd say that they're not your true friends. And if they're not your true friends and they're genuinely just strangers on the internet, then like, who cares what they think? I know that, again, that's like easier said than done, but like in the grand scheme of things, like, if like your dream, like mine, is to like create content and just like, you know, share your life online, imagine like holding yourself back your entire life and never going for it. And then like, I think that I've seen something that's like, imagine like being on your deathbed and thinking like, what if? And then like, that's it. I think it's just so much better to have known that you did go for it, that you did tell that person how you feel, that you did like, you know, just like jump at the opportunity when you saw it, rather than like letting that what if haunt you for the rest of your life. And instead just like being very comfortable and confident in who you are and like what you're doing and what you're chasing. And so yeah, that's it. Number 7, friends come and go. This is the sad one, and I feel like it's one that I have always sort of struggled with, especially as an introvert. I feel like, and like having moved a few times when I was younger, I'm gonna say it, like, it's so hard to make friends as an adult, and I do have a good number of like really good solid friends that I've had for like a fair number of years, and like we're literally catching up on FaceTime tonight, and I'm really excited because I haven't spoken to them in so long. But I feel like a really harsh reality of adulthood, and it's something that took me a while to understand, that it wasn't just me that went through this. It's just really friends, especially when you live in like a major city like London, and everyone talks about how lonely London is, and it is so true, and I think most major cities are like that. And I think what I've learned is that like if you want to make friends, if you want to build community, you have to go out of your way to go and do that, so that you can meet people and put yourself in spaces where you will be like able to meet people that are like-minded to you. And I'll go out on a limb here and just say like that's genuinely how Gabriel and I met, because we were in the same running space. So like I feel like that also is just like such a testament to like, you know, you will meet the right people, the right friends, and like who knows who else you'll meet, you know, once you like start to go out of your way and like make the time for that. But I think that like the first step of like actually making the time, going out of your comfort zone, and like going up and showing up to that first run club if you really enjoy running, and like that's how you're gonna make the running friends. That's how you're gonna build community. And like if you like dances, you go to a dance class, or like you go to an art class or a pottery class, and like you just like you have to go out of your way to find these things. And like because otherwise like it's not gonna come as easy as it used to for us. And I feel like growing up, going to school, like it was so much easier to make friends because you were all going to class every day, and so like you'd see each other every day, versus like now if you're like most of us that work from home, like you stare at 4 walls all day. And so I just feel like you have to like really, you know, go out of your way to do so. And like even then, like I'm saying, friends come and go, and like that's also kind of the second part of the whole friendship thing with adulthood, is like you really truly learn that like some friends are just for a season, and some friends you like think are like your lifetime friend, like lifetime best friend, and like they don't end up being that, and it's okay. And I think that like at the end of the day, it's just about like, you know, surrounding yourself with the best people possible, and like your support system, and people who truly and genuinely want to uplift you. And so like if that's like, I don't know, 5 people, like if you can like count them on your fingers, that's still like a solid number of people who would like pick up the phone in the middle of the night if you had an emergency, if something happened. And I feel like that is so much better than having like trying to have as many friends as possible but not actually having genuine connections with each of them. I feel like that's like a big lesson of adulthood, kind of unfortunate. Number 8, your career isn't your life. Do not let it consume you. I feel like I have been very cryptic about like what's happened to me this year in January. It's still something that I'm going through. I haven't really spoken much about it, and I will one day, I think, but I think it's just like, and most people have figured out like what it is. And I feel like it's just been like the biggest reminder to me that like you can give it your all. You can give your heart and soul to a job if you wanted. At the end of the day, like most companies just view you as a number, and like it doesn't matter how much work you do for them, how much you devoted yourself to a project. Like there was a project that I did at my company last July that like I literally was so stressed that I lost my period for the month. Like I'm not saying that lightly, like I was going through it, and just feel like at the end of the day, like no company is worth your mental health, like no matter the salary or, you know, the benefits. And I know that people need to have a job to pay the bills and like put food on the table, especially if you have a family. But I just think like if you are able to have a decision in that in any way, shape, or form, like your career is not your life. And you need to be able to like find a way to make it work for you, whether that's going out of your way to find a new job with a company that might like better support you, or, you know, changing career paths. And I feel like I'm definitely on that journey right now of just trying to figure out what's next. And if that means, you know, staying here or having to go live somewhere else. And it's sad, it's hard, and I think it's tough because like your career governs so much of what you do, but also like for me, for example, like your ability to be in a country and be living in a country. And so it's hard. It's a really hard balance to find, and I feel like I'm still sort of learning that going into 28, but I keeping my fingers crossed for me, for you, because I know a lot of people are going through this, and I know that we will all make it out the other side. Number 10, don't change yourself in order to be liked. And I feel like I've touched on this one, so I won't go into detail too much, but I just feel like it goes back to the one around, you know, wanting people to like you or trying to get everyone to like you. And I'm just gonna tell you right now, it's just not worth it. I went through this when I was like deep in my alcohol phase and like drinking, and it's just not worth it. It's not worth like being the fun drunk friend when you actually don't like being drunk, and if that's the only way that people like you, then I don't think that they're real friends. So moving on. Number 11, never stay in places you feel unwanted. And this one is hard because it's really hard to kind of like, I guess, know unless you're getting told. I guess this sort of relates for me to like situations with like breakups. And like number 12 also sort of links to this. Never beg for someone to stay. If someone wants to be with you, if someone wants you in their life, they will show you. They will tell you. Like if someone does not want you in their life anymore, if they have made that decision, leave. Like do not beg them to stay, because why would you want to like try and like prove to someone why? Like, you know your worth. You should know your worth. You don't need to prove that to someone. Like the right person will see that in you and will like never make you question whether or not they want you in their life. Getting a little bit deep. Number 13, when the going gets tough, make sure to take care of yourself. Journal, go to therapy, etc. I feel like it's really easy to busy yourself, and I feel like I was very guilty of this for a long time, where I was just like, I'm just going to absolutely fill my calendar so I never have to think about like this thing. And the thing is, like, you can busy yourself as much as you want, but like at the end of the day, and like literally for me it hits, like at the end of the day it will hit you like smack in the face, and you might have a big cry, or you might, you know, really be in your feels, but like genuinely that is so good for you. And I think that like one of the biggest things in the past year that I started doing again was journaling. Not the best at it. I don't do it every single day like I wish I did, but it is something that really helps me get my feelings out on paper. And if I'm like on the tube, I'll just like use my notes app in my phone. I feel like it's just a really nice way to like take what's up here and put it like out on paper or out on your notes app. It's like get it out. And I think it's even better if you can speak to someone in therapy about it. That's something I'm really hoping to do this year. I feel like I just need to figure out my plans for the rest of the year. I just feel like it's so important, like when you are in really tough situations, not to forget how important it is to take care of yourself. So this is your reminder to take care of yourself. Number 14, don't let anyone dim your sparkle. The things that make you, you are unique. So I think that this also goes back to the point around like trying to get people to like you. And like if you actually like, if someone is like projecting hate towards you or like saying something really rude towards you, like first of all, if they're making fun of something about you, like chances are they're probably very insecure about something themselves, and so they're protruding that onto you. Secondly, I think it's really easy to also like compare yourself to someone else and like wish that you could get rid of like something about you to be more like them. And I feel like what I really have been learning to remind myself more and more is like, no one will ever be like me. Like I am unique in myself. And so like just learning to be confident and owning that in yourself, I think just like leads to, I don't know, just being happier and more satisfied with life rather than chasing just like not real things, if that makes sense. Number 15, never be afraid to pick up and start over. You can trust yourself and you can do it. I feel like this is again like goes back to last year and where I was at this point last year and at many different points in my life. And I think that it's really hard to like in that moment when you are going through something and you sort of realize like what you have to do essentially, or like how your life is about to change. I think it's hard to, I think you have to kind of first accept it, but I think you have to then remind yourself, like, no matter what it is, you can get through it. Like, you are capable of getting yourself through it. And like, I think, you know, you have to remind yourself also of like all of the hard things that you've already been through, all of the bad days that you've gotten through, how you've managed to get through those, and how you can 100% get through this thing right here in this moment. And so I think that I've been through this in a couple of different instances, and I think it's just like, it's something that's really scary in the moment, but I think it kind of also goes back to like the ability to know yourself and accept yourself and be comfortable in yourself also allows you to then be able to trust yourself and the ability to start over whenever you would need to. Number 16, don't wait too long to tick off bucket list items. Life is too short. And I know that some of you guys might have some really big bucket list items. I definitely do too. I feel like I always have this on my list because I'm like, I had running a marathon on my list for the longest time, and I grew up playing sports and running, and I just never went for it because I genuinely just like did not believe that I was capable of running 26 miles. Here I am sitting here 7 marathons later, about to run her 8th and 9th this year. Like, I think it's just like, it's such a, I don't know, it's like, I feel like some bucket list things or some big goals that you might have really can loom over your head and seem like this big daunting thing. But like people say, when chasing big goals, if you break it down into smaller goals, it'll like help you eventually get there. If it's like going on vacation in the Maldives, for example, like that's going to be really expensive. So you start small and you start like, you know, putting aside a savings pot and you start saving money, and then like eventually book the hotel that you want to. All right, we are back. Had to change SD cards. But yeah, like I was saying, and start to create small goals to build towards that bigger goal or that bucket list item. Number 17, tell people you love them. I just think this one's so important, and I feel like you see so much stuff in the news about people randomly dying and like these massive traumatic, like huge catastrophic things that happen around the world in day to day. And I think it's just really sad, and I think you just never know like what could happen tomorrow. And I think that it's always worth telling people that you love them. I think it's always worth, you know, just reminding people and just saying it, even if you haven't said it for a long time. And I know that it can be a little bit awkward with family, but I think it's just something nice to say because you never know how much time you have with them. And I feel like that was a very sort of deep one, but I think it's just a nice reminder when I think about like the family members that I've lost, and I wished that I had told them that I loved them like sooner, and like, yeah. Number 18, remember to say thank you and let people know that you appreciate them. This sort of goes for just like everyone around you day to day, whether it's the barista or the store clerk or your waitress, but also like your partner and family members, and just like letting them know that you appreciate them and thanking them for things that they do and go out of their way to do for you. I think it's like just a really nice thing. It's a really simple thing to do, and I think that it really gets looked over because you might like start to expect something, or you might start to just like assume that like, you know, the coffee's going to be made by this barista, but I think it's just like you never know like what that barista is going through, if they've had a bad day. And yeah, I think it's just like a nice thing to remind yourself to just show people that you appreciate them more, and it just goes a long way. Number 19, say yes more. I feel like in my year of 27, I feel like it was my year of saying yes more, and it was saying yes to huge things, big things, but also small things, but just like the opportunity to like do more and just like not be afraid to like put myself out there. And so I think that it's been a really like lovely year of teaching me how that can like really lead you to other opportunities and like lead you to, you know, create more. Like I feel like when I went into 27, when I started like the year at 27, I was still only really doing like videos on TikTok and Instagram, and you know, a year later I'm on YouTube, and it's just really nice to kind of like see how like my content journey has like come and like the opportunities that have come along with it. And I feel like I'm just continuing to really enjoy it, and I think a lot of that like in like that sort of content journey comes with saying yes and just like going for it. And I think it can be really, I think that sometimes like before I went into like the Manchester event, I was like, I think I just saw myself as like not worthy of being there. And I remember going into the VIP room and just being like, wow, all these people are like gonna run so fast, and like I'm just like still been trying to break sub 4 for like however many marathons I had at that point. And it's just like owning up to yourself and just like walking into a room and like believing that you also belong there and that you don't have to do anything different to belong. And I think that it's I think it's definitely the way in which I've just also grown more confident in like putting myself out there online as well. And so, yeah. Number 20, believe that you're more than capable of hitting your goal and like reaching your goal. And obviously, like when I'm talking about this, I'm going to talk about running because that's my life. I feel like my biggest learning in Chicago Marathon last year was like half the battle is going through like the 16 weeks or however long of training. The other half is building the mental resilience and the mental belief that you actually are like do believe that you are capable of achieving that goal. And I feel like I lived in so much fear during those 16 weeks, and like I just didn't believe I was capable of it. And when I like wasn't hitting pace, I would be super hard on myself. And I feel like because this time around I am a lot more confident in myself, and I'm a lot more like, I don't know, I feel a little more experienced after last year. I feel like I'm just a lot like kinder to myself, because like I know that I'm very well capable of like getting close to a 320, if not getting a 320 at London. But I think like half the battle in chasing big goals in like the sport of running, for example, is believing in yourself and like believing that you are actually capable of hitting that goal. Number 22, food enjoyment will always be so much better than food restriction. Don't let it diminish your life. I feel like I like have shared obviously my running journey and like the eating disorder journey, my relationship with food and that journey and what that continues to look like. Like I literally just shared a marathon training series video on the fact that I still deal with body insecurity and food issues from time to time, and just like not fueling myself enough, and then like having a really bad session and being like, should have fueled more. And I feel like that's just like, it's come with recovery, and it's come with just being more self-aware. And you know, I'm very honest about the fact that this sort of stuff definitely still affects me, but at the same time I feel like the more that I've shared my journey online with my eating disorder, the more that it breaks my heart to see how much something like an eating disorder really holds people back in their just like overall life, and like how much a mental illness like eating disorders can really just like take over your life and take away things that like you love to do. And like I think it just like, I don't know, it breaks my heart on one hand, but on the other hand, like obviously having been through it, I understand that it is really hard to go through, and it's really hard to like, it's not just like a, you know, you go one day you're recovered. Like it's definitely not like that. It took me 2 years to recover, and even beyond that, like reaching like a healthy weight, like I still think that like the recovery journey is never ending, and you have to continuously act on it and like be smart about like your food choices. But I think it's just not worth counting every single calorie. And like I know that some people like count the macros and stuff, and like I think that like having been through an eating disorder, that's just never going to be for me, because I struggle with the numbers thing. So like I just don't want to ever count calories. But at the same time, I just think that like living without like, I don't know, carbs, which was my sort of like food fear for such a long time, was just like so sad. And I feel like now that I have carbs, like it genuinely brings me joy, because it was like really a point and a thing that I avoided for so long in my life. So I just think that like it's just not worth it, and you should enjoy the pizza, enjoy the croissant, enjoy like whatever it is, the cake. I know I will be on my birthday, but yeah, I think it's just so much better to enjoy food rather than to try and restrict it and control it. Number 23, don't be afraid to speak up and use your voice. So don't be afraid to share your story, to speak up for someone. I think that this goes without saying that like I every year share my story about my sexual assault, for example, in addition to the eating disorder, but I do so to encourage others to also speak up, but also feel like they're not alone. And I know that not everyone is going to feel comfortable to share their story and, you know, be public about something, especially online. And so I'm not saying like do it out of a place of discomfort, but like if you do feel open to sharing your story and to sharing that with someone else, to maybe like talk through it, or talk to a therapist about it, or talk to a family member about it, to a friend about it. And I think that like in a way, I have definitely shared my story with people directly if it's like a friend that's been through sexual assault, and if I'm sort of like doing it from a place of like encouraging them to report it if they do feel comfortable in doing so, but also with friends that suffer with their relationship with food, who might also have eating disorders, and just like talking through like basically everything that I went through, from like losing my period to losing my hair and like, you know, really low blood pressure and all of these really negative side effects that came from trying to just control my food and control my weight and control my body. And I think that I do so to try and like hinder people away from that lifestyle, because I don't think it's truly sustainable for a long period of time. And I think that it's like that's sort of the way that people then fall into like an eating disorder, for example. I think it's like more so, it's something that also feels very invigorating if you're sharing your story for the very first time. And it's something that I guess will never like not encourage, because I think that it definitely like it can be very powerful and speak volumes. So yeah, it's just something that I feel very passionate about. Number 24, remember that each new year is an opportunity to turn a new page, but also remember to leave certain things behind that are no longer serving you. So I think that, like the sort of ins and outs trend, I think that I also want to do the same with my birthday and just like really assess in the year of 27, like what are my ins, what are my outs. And I think that with each year that I get older, obviously those things change. And I think that it's something that you kind of have to be honest with yourself in some scenarios and situations. So I think it's something that's really worth doing, to kind of just like before you go into or like a new year, like from a birthday, or like a new year, like, you know, 2023 to 2024. I think it's always worth sort of like, in the spirit of the new year, like you don't have to do anything like drastic or crazy, like some fad diet or like a juice cleanse, but just like, you know, what are your actual serious goals that you want to achieve for the year? What are things that you don't believe are serving you that you want to leave behind? In, for example, for me in 27, that I learned just like weren't for me. And so I'll definitely be sitting down to do that. Number 25, what's meant for you will always be. I told you this point was definitely somewhere later in my points, but yeah. What's meant for you will always be, and I fully believe that with everything that I'm even going through at the moment. I believed it last year when I was going through everything I was going through, so I just think it's a really nice way to look at things. Number 26, don't forget to call your grandma. It's a random one, but like one that I always remind myself because it brings me joy. I know it brings her joy. Someone who doesn't have my grandpas in my life anymore because they both passed away, I make it a thing to frequently check in with both my grandmas, and it's just something that I feel brings me closer to family, even being so far away. So call your family member, whoever that is, and just like check in with them. I think it's just nice. Number 27, always remember to celebrate all you've accomplished in the last year, even the smaller hidden victories. I feel like it's really easy to look at social media as like a really big highlight reel of like really showing off, or if you're like on LinkedIn, you see people like getting job promotions or new jobs. I think it's really easy to see like everyone else having these like great big major successes in life, but I think it's also important to remember to celebrate yourself, even if you're the only one celebrating those things for you. I think it's still worth celebrating, and just remembering that like it's still like another step closer and like helping you become a better version of yourself, and like just continually like bettering yourself. Oh. And lastly, this is literally out of battery. Lastly, number 28, never forget who you are, where you've come from. And it's sort of a cheesy last one to end on, but I just think that it's so good to remember everything that makes you you, everything that's brought you to this moment. And I feel like I know that a lot of these points kind of like sound like similar to each other in some sort of way, but I feel like I'm just a very reflective person, and I like to like remind myself of these things going into the new year. So I really hope that you enjoyed this video. I hope it wasn't too drastically long, but I am really looking forward to 28 and seeing what it has in store. Thank you so much if you took the time to watch this video or listen to this podcast. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you are on YouTube. Let me know what you want to see next. And if you're on the podcast, please remember to rate the podcast because it really helps the podcast. But I really enjoyed making this. I really loved making this, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video or episode as a 28-year-old.